started, thank you so much for coming to our Meet Your Local Author Night. Are you set up there?
I'm good.
We're good? Okay, awesome. So my name is Louise Vela. I'm the Adult Services Manager here at the Joliet Public Library. You'll find me at either building. And I am really excited for our partnership with the Right On Joliet writing group. This event kind of evolved through our partnership with them. The Right On Joliet meets here, hopefully soon, twice a month, but they're here the first Thursdays of the month, and they meet through Zoom on the third Thursdays. And it's a group of local authors who meet to talk, share their writings, support each other, encourage each other. And it's a very, very active group. And they meet here at the library, and over the years our relationship has evolved, and we have a local author collection in both buildings that was built based on the generous donations from our local authors. Be happy to point that out to anybody who'd like to see them. And then these Meet Your Local Author events is another part of that partnership, just to have the chance for people to come in and get to know the authors a little bit through a Q&A and have them read from their writings, and then have a chance to talk with them one-on-one as well. Tonight we have two authors here. We have Markley and Robbins, and we're just going to do, I'll do an informal Q&A, talk about their books, and everybody from the audience has a chance to ask questions as well. And I guess we'll get started. And did I say yes? Okay. So I have a. So so Mike, I have a little bio here. Mike is an emerging author of crime thrillers. He lives in the Chicago area with his wife on 4 acres of land. He's a former member of the Christian Writers Guild and published his own newsletter. His interest and knowledge of the mafia lifestyle has led him to write about it. So that's good.
And a little scary.
A little scary. A little scary, yeah. But, I was born and raised in Chicago, so that's intriguing. So Mike, can you tell us a little bit about the books that you've written?
I've written 2 books, Necessary Blood. Necessary Death is the first one. It's going to be a series. Necessary Blood is the second one. The third one, titled is Necessary Pain. And what I did, I took it, I wanted to write a Christian fiction novel about the mob because I know there's interest in the mob, but I wanted to take it from a different point of view, so to speak. So my main character is a person who runs his business like the mob. And the mob is trying to always work their way into his business, but he's always been refusing to have a partnership with them. But then they kill his brother. His father died of a heart attack. And then he realizes another death that was necessary. And he goes on to protect his business and stuff like that. He goes into a defense mode. Right now he's trying to work. He becomes a Christian. So he's trying to do it in a way that would be not against the law. He's finding that very difficult. He bounces back and forth because he's used to one lifestyle. He wants to change that lifestyle. He's having a problem doing that.
That's great. And is your character in the trilogy?
It's going to be 4 books.
4 books total,
Yes.
and the same character. Are the books set in Chicago?
Yes, they are. And actually, Joliet is called Pine Bridge. Yes. But Chicago is Chicago, but Joliet's Pine Bridge.
I personally, when I read books, I love a sense of space, and
Okay.
the location. So I love reading books about Chicago. Yeah, that's exciting. So where did you get the inspiration to write this book?
I first started writing poetry. Then I started writing short stories. And my wife said, "Would you like the mob so much? You need to write a Christian book on the mob." I'm like, "I can't write fiction." But we happened to be walking on a trail when she made that. By the time we got done with the walk, I had the book, how I wanted to start it, and it just rolled on from there. She was the biggest inspiration. She said he could do it if I just sit down and do it.
And what kind of research did you do about the mob?
books in my library about unfive families, how the model is structured, from Lucky Luciano until Paul Castellano. I don't know what Brand Z is, but I met him, talked to him, I sent him a copy of my first book, and he compared it to The Godfather. So that was a nice push. So I talked to him a lot, and his lifestyle, what he's gone through as far as kind of the same thing as my character. He became a Christian, and now he doesn't do that lifestyle anymore. But right now, my character is still being drawn back into it. But that's where my inspiration came, which is my love for the mob. And I know a lot about it, so what else do you know?
And how long have you been writing?
I wrote my first poem in 1994, so 28 years. Yeah, 20 years.
Do you still write poetry?
Not as much. No, I'm straight on fiction, and I have a website where I write a blog.
And what's your writing style? You know, I mean, I'm sure you must need to give a day job. Is there something
Yes.
else that you do?
Yeah.
So when do you find time to write? And how do you
Really-
focus?
I focus because when I finally decide to write, I realize I have to sit down and do it. But I try to do it in the morning, and now I start so early, I have to change that, so the evening. My days are 10 hours long, so when I usually sit down in front of the computer, it's like, so but I have to force myself to do it. So usually in the evenings, after dinner, I'll make chores in the house and stuff like that. A lot of times when Christine goes to bed, I'll stay up. She can't get too late. I won't. But I sit in the office and I read. I try to get some time like that. So I do that.
And where do you get your ideas for a story? And if you have an idea, like, are you starting at the beginning, like first line? Do you have, is it the end that comes to you, or just?
I don't use a storyboard, but I know how the story where I want the story to go. So getting from point A to point B is where the difficulty runs in. But most times when I write, it's almost like I'm reading the story. So I'll be writing something, and I go, oh, wait a minute, that's perfect. That'll work like that. And then I'll write that down. So I'm actually living the story, watching the story, reading the story as I'm writing it. That's how I write.
Thank you. I'm going to just pause for a second. Are there any questions from the audience?
Yes.
You just helped me isolate how I work. I never could thank you so much. I live it. And what did you say? You live it and you write it?
Yeah, I
that's really
live the
good.
story out as I'm reading it or as I'm watching it, and how I think it now, so the ideas just roll.
Okay, so I never understood how I process this. Thank you so much, Mike Markley.
Okay. Yes.
I'd like to know why he has so much interest in the mafia, where that candy came from.
The first book I ever really got sucked into, to use the term, was The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton.
Oh, yeah.
I had to write that, and that was about a gang and loyalty, commitment, stuff like that. I think it just stems from that. I like the idea of power, having control. You know, sometimes the way they get that isn't legal, but I just like that lifestyle of being dedicated to something or someone where you give your all to it up to the point of death. Where, of course, my story comes from, where people give their life to Christ to the point of death because they believe in what they're following. Just like the mafia believes, they're following it, they won't do anything against the family because they know it'll cause death, and they'll live it till they die.
So from The Outsiders, did you read The Godfather?
Yes.
Okay, so it was the book, not necessarily the movie then,
Right, it was the book,
Okay,
yes.
all right,
Yeah.
very cool.
I just have to say The Outsiders is one of my all-time favorites.
I probably read the thing 6 or 7 times, but yes.
Probably, I don't
Yeah.
know. I think the first one was
It is.
that was
Very-
movie theater to the bright sunlight. All I had on my mind was all the men in a rock.
Yeah. And then when I got done with that, I said to myself, I'm gonna write a book.
Yeah.
That was in 8th grade. It took me, I won't tell you how long, but it took me quite a while to get that book wrote, but I finally got it wrote.
That's awesome. Any other questions?
Yes.
Question. So when you sit down, it's hard to sit down and get things moving. Do you have like a word count that you try to complete? Do you have a chapter that you try to complete, or how does that work? When you can sit.
Usually I just sit and roll, and if I get on a roll, I just keep going.
Okay.
But what I need to do, Christine's always told me, I need to schedule. So
See,
I need to
that's-
sit down for an hour's time, or a half hour's time, but I need to get that done. And I realized that, if I write 2 pages a day, okay, in half a year, that's 6 months, that's, 150, that's 300 pages.
Right.
So I just know this, I was telling Tom earlier today, I just gotta sit down, forget the excuses, and just write.
I think I'm in your camp. I got to sit down.
I gotta force myself to do it, and usually when I do, the inspiration comes. I can't sit there and wait for inspiration. That's a cop-out. You gotta wait. So,
So, so it sounds like you like to read.
Yes.
Who are some of your favorite authors? And you draw inspiration from?
John Grisham, I love John Grisham. Spiritually wise, Max Lucado, I love what he writes. I've read some Stephen King, I've read some Ted Decker. But I would say John Grisham because of the suspense, the little way he writes, I like his style, that's kind of where I want to go with my books as far as the suspense. Can't wait to turn the next page. I want to finish this book because it's, so I'd say John Grisham right there.
And, let's see, I guess I want to go back more to the mom and the
Okay.
mafia. Have you ever met somebody?
Other than Michael Franzese, who used to be in the Colombo crime family. In fact, he was pretty close to being almost the underboss. Other than that, no, I've never met anybody else.
Did you have
Who?
the tour we took in Chicago?
Oh, I take it back, yes, thank you. One time she surprised me on my birthday. Frank Costello. No, Calabrese.
Yeah.
Frank Calabrese used to be, okay? He has a tour that he puts on, but he also puts on a private tour. So she said the private tour was just me and him and her in his car. And he
I'm
drove us,
scared to death.
he drove us around all the different areas where things happened in Chicago. He had an iPad with him to point everything out and stuff like that. He was very, very informative, very friendly. But yeah, that's right. I forgot about meeting him. That was very, very interesting. He took me places where bodies may have been, could be.
Jeez.
And Christine was like, in fact, even myself, okay, we're by this guy by ourselves. He's taking us to abandoned buildings. What's going to happen here?
Hey, Mrs. Markley, how private do you want this tour to be?
And she even called,
On the
or not
dogs.
called, but she emailed Michael Franzese and asked him, "Is this going to be safe? I'm worried about this."
Love it.
But yeah, it
that's
was
so
it
funny.
was a good time. Yeah, so that was another one. Frank Kelly Jr.
Yeah, I grew up living closer to Chicago, and I actually went to school with the daughters of the Squatcher brothers.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, and I remember when they died, and that was just horrible, but, that's my neighborhood. It's like, I love those stories. But, so a little bit more about your book.
Okay.
So your main character,
Michael Morello. Yeah.
and can you tell us a little bit about him? Is he
He's
kind of like autobiographical, or a person that's kind of, that inspires you?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. He's very direct. He has his ways of doing it. He loves not being the center of attention. He runs everything his way. He set up his business with 4 other business associates, not family. So there's still 5 things in there. And each one has their own part of the business to help tighten this business run. And he wants to make sure that it's, he doesn't care if it's not above board. In fact, he knows it's not, but he wants to accomplish, he can see himself being a Fortune 500 company. And he's that self-absorbed. And it's like, no one cares about himself, nobody else will cheat here. Come to find out, it hurts him being exclusive.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but a comment. And I don't say this because Mike and I are friends, but rather as a reader, and a reader of many, many styles. And I would say the same thing about Colleen, because her writing is so unique. She writes so many different styles. But when Mike first wrote this book, the conceit is so weird and so unexpected that when it actually works, it was shocking to me. I mean, in a good way. I was pleasantly surprised to see that he had brought it all together in a way that was pleasant and, you know, to me as a reader. And so I think it's one of those things that's not predictable in a good way. You don't expect it, and that's a real nice result.
Any other questions? Would you like to recommend it?
Sure. Christine said when I read this, you know, I gotta really read it up and not just be blah. So I'll try my best. But this is from chapter 26 from my first book, Necessary Death. Michael's mind raced. How is he going to protect both Susan and Elizabeth, let alone himself? As a speeding vehicle approached them, Michael noticed the black windows start to roll down. Here it comes. This is why I do not want people I care about too close to me. They are innocent of this lifestyle and should not be a casualty because of it. Then Michael's mind once again was filled with the many lives that were changed and lost because of his life. Now, could it be that Susan and Elizabeth were also going to be added to that list? Michael could see the barrel of the rifle protrude from the open window. He instinctively stepped in front of both girls and heard the sound. Bang, bang! Then came laughter from the little kids with big grins on their faces as the SUV continued to fly past them down the street. That's not too safe. They're driving way too fast, Susan said. And those kids should be in seatbelts, too, was Elizabeth's response. Michael stood there, and all the outside noise vanished. He could not hear Susan or Elizabeth. The noise of the street seemed to disappear. The realization of his own mortality became a reality. Death, for once, was something he now feared. In all his life, he never feared it, even with the death of his brother and father. His life was surrounded with corruption and death, the death of others. He was now sure of was necessary to obtain all his power. What power? That power has no power over death. That power did not save Nick. That power did not save his dad. And his power would not save him. Death was now something that was very real and fearful for Michael. As he stood there in the middle of the sidewalk, he was silent and could not seem to move. Then, the fear of death was soon replaced with anger. He was not responsible for the death that had entered his life. The former close friends were. The ones that he had trusted so much to, he had turned on him. Soon the noise of the city and voices of Susan and Elizabeth would once again be heard. Michael turned to look at both of them. You two be careful. I have business to take care of. He turned and walked away. Susan tried to get his attention, but Michael continued to walk toward his car and reached into his pocket for his cell phone. He tried to get in contact with Dominic, but there was no answer. As he opened the door to his car, he stopped and looked back at Susan and Elizabeth. He smiled and waved goodbye. He got into his car and drove off. As Michael drove, he clenched the steering wheel. Now whom could he trust? The one he trusted the most was dead, and the others had turned on him. All he had was starting to mean nothing. He drove in the direction of the country club, making a mental list. First, he was more than positive that the rest of Titan ordered Nick's death and had Paul Delamani taken out. No one from Titan had called when Michael's father was in the hospital. They were all too eager to avoid both funerals and, though it seemed strange to Michael at first, he now understood. Looking at the videotape he had seen, it was definitely a hit that was ordered looking at the videotape, it was definitely a hit ordered, and when given to Steve to handle. When Steve came to Michael's office, he was coming for permission to carry out the hit. It still haunted Michael. As the list grew and the events of the past 2 weeks filled Michael's mind, the anger grew and so did the confusion. All the thoughts of the loss of his father and brother, the betrayal of those at Titan he had held close, the effect Elizabeth was having on his life, and what Dominic made be planning mounted, making Michael feel nauseous. Then Michael remembered the words of Reverend Simon, spoke at the funeral. What does it profit if a man gains the whole world but loses his own soul? Michael was not sure what the last part of that sentence meant, but he definitely started to wonder if what he had was profit. Nick was dead, there was no profit there. Michael used influence, power, and money to get what he wanted, there was no profit there. His mind was filled with all the possessions he had and how he actually obtained all of them. The thought was making him feel sicker. He pulled off the side of the road, got out, and vomited. He got back in the car, grabbed a napkin out of the glove box and wiped his mouth. Then he grabbed a piece of gum. He hated how he was feeling, and he was sure that all of these emotions had been brought on by the failure of those he had held close. Michael pulled the car back onto the road and headed toward the Wooded Hill Country Club. He was now making a new list. Mo, Willie, and Sammy were at the top of that list. They would have to pay for what they had done. For the first time in Michael's life, he was able to justify having someone killed. Someone was going to pay for the loneliness and insecurity Michael was feeling. Someone was going to pay for killing Nick. Michael was going to make sure of that.